Are you a first-time counselor, or are you a first-class counselor who's been around for a while? Because Matt and I are going to swap some stories with you today that are going to help you prepare yourself for some of the weird things that come up when you're a counselor.
Because when you filled out that application to be a camp counselor, you had no idea that you'd be doing half the things that you ended up doing. So this show is dedicated to all the weird, wacky, and wonderful things that you also do when you're a counselor at summer camp.
Yep. So if you're getting ready for an unexpected bus ride, or if you are finding a way to conquer the weather, we got some tips for you today about the jobs that just kind of come up. So enjoy, laugh, and learn a little bit with us in our episode of First Class Counselors. Hello, Camp Pros. This is Oliver Gregan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a summer camp professional.
And I'm Matt Hansberger. My pronouns are also he, him, and I'm the executive producer of podcasting at Go Camp Pro. And you are tuned in to First Class Counselors.
Yeah, so this is a series for camp directors to give to their counselors as they hire and prepare them for the upcoming summer.
Because our job on this podcast is help camp counselors realize the true superheroes that they are. Because camp counselors, you are the key to kids coming back year after year. Because of all the wild and wacky jobs that you do at camp, it makes the camp experience better and has those kids coming back. So we do this podcast for you.
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in. Here we're going to cover one specific topic and cover the essentials as fast as we can.
It's the need to knows,
The can't go without,
the fundamentals.
the basics. So, what are we talking about today? Well, you see, if you're applying for camp, or maybe you've been working at a camp, you may have seen this one line that's on your job description that reads, other duties as required. So, a lot of us camp professionals love that sentence because it has a lot more meaning than you might think from initially reading it. It's a short sentence at the end of the job description, but it means a whole awful lot. So, today we're going to take some time to show our stories that fall into that jurisdiction. These are the stories where it is the job that has to get done, the weird tasks we have to perform, and the unexpected flexibility needed from counselors who are just trying to do their best. We hope for first class counselors, this may identify the responsibilities of being a counselor. For those who have maybe been around for a few summers, this might give you something to put under your belt that you can pull out when the time is needed down the line. So, with that being said, we want to start off with just covering some basic need to knows of camp requirements for those first time counselors who might need a job description kind of explained to them or get a good idea of what being a camp counselor is like. So the first thing we want you to know is if you're working at a residential camp, you will most likely be sleeping in a cabin with campers. Another really important thing that we like to tell you is something called in loco parentis. They should cover this in staff training, but you're also going to hear it here first, or maybe you've heard it before, but it means in the place of parents. So just know that when you're taking care of kids, you are going to be their legal guardian, or you're the person who's taking care of them. So their health and well-being is in your hands. It's very important, and you'll obviously get a lot more detail on it when you're in staff training, and ask about it. It's very important. Uh, Something else you need to know is you're typically going to be helping instruct some very skilled activity. So a lot of people think about lifeguards or maybe horseback riding or archery. You might not have to lead those skills if you've never done them before. Hopefully, if you do end up leading them that summer, you get some form of training before you start teaching something that could be potentially dangerous. But at the end of the day, you're going to be either helping or assisting in some of these things. It might be arts and crafts. It might be doing theater. It might be playing an instrument. It's something that you hopefully have some background in, but just know that you might need to teach it. So I always like to say, if you know you're going to be teaching something, some type of a skill, it's always good to hop on a YouTube or look into some kind of trainings that you can do beforehand to prep yourself for it. The other thing to know is a lot of camps will put their values and culture on their job description, and just make sure that whatever you're looking for that summer matches that job description. So I know with the why, we always put things down like uh, caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. They're the four core values. So we expect all of our counselors to come and represent them. Some camps with religious values may let you know that, and that they want to let you know that they may be practicing their religion there. Some do have maybe restrictions on who's coming to be counselors for them, but most, as far as I know, will say, hey, we're inclusive to anybody to come and work at our site. You don't need to be our specific religion to come and work for us. So that is something to look into as well. If you're somebody who might have those values that you want to check in on before you go and work at a place, because you want to make sure it matches what you care about. And then the last one, and this one is just something that I want to mention, but I call them jobs. They're just the weird things that happen around camp that you might need to handle. This might be moving things, painting things, picking things up, cleaning stuff. They are the typical things that just need to happen to make summer camp run. We're not going to talk about them so much today in our other duties as required, but they definitely fit the bill. So for those of you guys who are listening in today who may be like, one time I had to pull lily pads out of the lake so that we could canoe because it was too thick of lily pads, which is a job I know I've maybe had to do. Uh, but those kind of jobs, we're going to stay a little bit wary of today. We're going to focus on maybe some of the things that regularly happen that counselors need to do that fits in the other duties as required. Matt, what are some really big things that fit into this job description category that you think counselors need to know about?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I would have much to add. I think the one thing is that, on paper, that's really, those are the typical things you're going to see, right? That you're sleeping in cabin with kids, et cetera, et cetera. But what some job descriptions miss is the amount of care that goes into this job, the amount of like caring just for the well-being, emotionally, of those kids, as well as building community and connections with the other campers. That is something that should be, on all job descriptions, that might not be, but that's the main focus, is to help those kids have the best week at camp. And often that's by discovering some of their best friends ever. So, and that's why we do all these things. We do the random jobs. We scoop lily pads out of the pond because we want the camper experience to be incredible and transformative and all those things. At Pierce Williams, the camp that I previously worked at, at the top of their job description, the very first thing, it never said other duties as required. The first thing that it said was to do what needs to be done to give the campers the most amazing summer camp experience. And that's a Joe Richards ism who got that from another summer camp, but it reminds us that's why we're here. We're here for the kids. We do everything for them in service of them. So as we talk about these weird and wacky stories and these like unexpected situations that you might find yourself in as a camp counselor, remember, even if we don't say it explicitly, it's all about the kids.
Yeah, you hit that right on the head before we started stories. Our focus here is these are jobs that you might end up doing as a counselor, but they're not going to be what you do every single day. So don't think just because you hear one here that you're like, man, I would never do that in 1,000 years. Just know that with all jobs, there comes the things that you really enjoy and the things you might not enjoy so much. So as you listen to our stories, take them with a grain of salt and know that every camp is a little bit different. And these are some of Matt and my stories or things that we've heard about from other camps. So here we go. Matt, do you want to kick us off? I got you on the list with our first story of the day.
Yes. So a job, I kind of framed mine in like a job that you might find yourself in that you're like, I didn't know I was going to be a blank this summer. So my first one is I didn't know that I was going to be a wilderness guide and interpreter this summer. So the camp that I was a counselor at, the Cairn family of camps, they one of the cool things that counselors got to do was they rotated into some of the wilderness trips that they did. And in my second year of counseling, I got to lead, or I wasn't leading, was not leading, was not qualified to lead a hike, but I was on a hike. I was kind of like the person, there was a tripper who knew the route and knew all the wildernessy things. And then there was me who was in charge of the 7 kids, essentially like their person. So the tripper could do their thing. And then we like did together on stuff. But on the very first day of the hike, we got maybe, I don't know, 9 kilometers, which is however many miles, American listeners, I'm sorry. But on that first stretch, we had a camper who decided that the hike was not for them. And we still had 9 kilometers to go. So we were like about halfway through the first day of hiking, and this camper decided that it wasn't for them and that they weren't going to be able to do it. And they were really emotional. And we tried all of the things that you do as a camp counselor when you're taking care of emotional kids, which is my 4th story, I think. But that kid had to get walked out. So, and the tripper felt that because they had more first aid knowledge and they were going to be walking more, they said, okay, Matt, or Iskis, my camp name, this is Matt, you need to stay here, literally just stay here off to the side and hang out with these kids. If you need to cook a meal, just use one that you don't need to cook. I shouldn't be long. And they like huffed it. But while they were gone, I was the tripper. I was the wilderness interpreter. If a kid said, hey, can I eat that thing? I had to have the wherewithal to say no, right? Not to be like, ooh, let's test it, because I didn't know. So the lesson behind that story is, number one, you're going to be put into situations of responsibility that you never thought you were going to be put into. And two, it never hurts to have some nature knowledge in your back pocket, to know your local flora and fauna, to know that kind of stuff, as well as games and other ideas, because you might have to entertain a group of 6 kids in the middle of the woods for 3 hours while the tripper is taking a kid out. So that's story number one, job number one for me.
Yeah, you just made me think of another thing that should probably be on the job description for the camp directors who might be listening to our show. But comfortable in the woods, a lot of people sign up for camp and they don't realize maybe how much time they might be spending in the woods, especially if your camp does an overnight or something where they have to maybe spend a night in a tent. I've definitely met counselors who were leading an overnight and had never slept in a tent before, and they played it off well. Hats off to them, but it's something to know. All right, my first story has to do something that has to kind of do with the paperwork of camp. I know as a counselor, you will be required to do some paperwork, but this is kind of a fun one you might not think about. But a lot of camps do birthday cards. So for me, it was always, birthday cards are things that counselors will get during the summer. It's their cabin group most of the time, and they'll write happy birthday. And then the cards go into the office and they get stuck there all winter and every single month or every week. Whoever is the office manager will take out the pile for that week and just put them in the mail and send them out. But if you're a counselor, typically thinking about someone's birthday that might be in January isn't the first thing on your mind when you're taking care of kids. So typically, birthday cards get lost, misplaced, wet, dirty, not written. So if you are a counselor, my kind of little advice for this little job is just do them right away. If you get those birthday cards, write them right away. If you're looking to write something special for every single card, uh, try. You can go that extra mile. But looking up birthday cards on like Pinterest or something also gives you a really easy out for, what am I going to put on this card? Because you might get them on the first day or two of your campers. You might not know your campers that well, and you just need to get them in as fast as possible. So that's a really good way to do it. And if you do wait to the end of the week, just because you have them, split the task. Don't just be the only one writing. You have a co-counselor. You can split the job between the two of them. But yeah, birthday cards. It's not in the job description, but it is one of the tasks that if you do it well and on time, your camp director will like you and you get bonus points. I'm going to be honest. As a camp director, I hold the counselors who get the birthday cards in high regard.
And I would also say, like, bringing it back to like why we do what we do, those birthday cards are going to be phenomenal for a kid. They're going to get, if their birthday, like my birthday's in November, and when I got my birthday like postcard from camp, I instantly was talking to my parents and was like, when can I go back to camp? Have you signed me up for camp yet? Look, can I go back to camp? I really didn't go back to camp. I was calling all my friends, be like, yo, I got my birthday card. Can we be in the same cabin again? So that's number one. And Oliver said it nicely. I'm going to say it not so nicely. There better be something unique on that birthday card. I like, no question. And if that means you have to take a little, like a piece of paper and a journal around with you, and taking down notes of awesome things they did or something that made them unique and special, do it. You can use Pinterest, and you can also put in the effort to have something special in there, because that is what's going to make the difference and make a kid want to come back to camp.
Yeah, plus when you write those birthday cards and you really want to write something on your resume, you could say performed marketing for my summer camp. So it's also a resume builder.
That's
So
right.
enjoy writing some birthday cards come summer and being a amazing role model for your kids, sending them birthday cards when they wouldn't expect to get those cards.
Mhm.
Matt, you got another story to share?
Yeah. So number two of my jobs is, I never expected that I would be a theater performer slash musical cast member slash Cirque du Soleil performer when I was a counselor at camp. Because at the very least, we talked about this, I think, in a past episode, at the very, very least, you, I hope you're watching the YouTube video. Oliver's doing tricks anyway, at the very least, you are going to have to lead games for kids, or you're going to have to lead something. You're going to have to stand up in front of a group of 20 kids and be able to speak loudly, to be engaging, to capture their attention, and to not sound like monotone the entire time. For other camps, they're going to do creative announcements, or there's going to be themes with characters and costumes, or there's going to be musical performances of some sort. Like we did an entire One of my best friends wrote a musical about the book The Giving Tree, and he did that when he was like 20 years old, a whole musical for camp, and it was awesome. So you never know what like musical or performance opportunities are going to come up. So whether that's like taking some improv lessons or being a part of a club in high school or university to build some of those skills, at least strong public speaking skills at a minimum. But it's just fun. It's fun when you do that. And again, why is it important for the campers? Because they have fun watching it. They'll get a kick out of those things, and that will be a memorable thing for them about camp.
Yeah, I mean, Matt saw me do some tricks and stuff, but those are some of the first things that I learned as a camp counselor, right? Was how to entertain people, um, on a stage and enjoying, whether it was singing a song or doing a skit or trying to do a magic act, which I can't do magic tricks. So, you do what you can. Uh, my next little job that comes out of nowhere on you is transportation duty. So you might not think about this because, you're going to stay at a camp all summer, you're living there. So, when are you really going to get off camp? But transportation is a big thing. So some camps will do a bus to camp. So your camp might be 4 hours away from a major city, and for resident camp, the bus will show up at the city, and you'll get on that bus too, and you'll get your campers to camp. Or you might get on that bus really early on, drive all the way down to the city really early in the morning, and pick up the kids that way. So just know that you might be on that bus for a while. So finding ways to make sure you entertain yourself, but also that you're entertaining the kids who are on the bus, right? If it's their first time coming to camp, or if they're coming back to camp, that bus has to be entertaining and not overwhelming. It's a really delicate balance because it's the first impression that camp is getting. So I know a lot of camp directors who go through this who really focus on putting a really good counselor, a really good leadership staff member on those buses to guarantee those kids have a great, trip up to camp. Or just as important, a great trip back home from camp, because we talk about it a lot with parents who are picking up their kids is how do you make sure that the parent asks the question of how was your camp? How was your time at camp? And the answer the kid gives is good. It's not going to really sell that camp to that parent that their child had a great experience. So if you're on that bus on the way home, it's also your job to, talk about camp and get the campers talking about camp. And if it's a 4-hour bus ride in those bigger cases, you got to make sure that those kids are getting off that bus, seeing their parents after all that time, and are just so excited to talk about all the amazing experiences they had at camp. And then just another kind of thing that I put in the transportation duty, and this might happen for you at your camp, depending on what the policy is and how it works, but hospital runs or emergency room runs or doctor runs or whatever it might be. It might be a town run. These things sometimes can take a really long time. So you might be the driver if you're maybe a leadership staff member, but you also may just be the third, right? Just someone who's there for the safety of taking care of the camper and making sure that there's an extra person there for the protection of everybody. But it could be a long time, and it could be difficult to just keep yourself entertained, especially if you're just sitting in the lobby of a hospital and the camper is in there with the parents and you're just waiting all this time to get picked up by the camp or whatever it might be. So just know you need to have things like your phone on you just so you can contact the camp about anything that might be going on. Um, Hopefully something to entertain yourself, whether it's like your phone or you're bringing a book with you. If you are going on those runs, typically the nurses will also give you important information that you might need about the camper, like their doctor's paperwork, whatever it might be. So just kind of learn during staff training what your camp's policy is, what you might need when you go on that hospital run. And then Matt also kind of gave me a little glance and reminded me, if you're working at a day camp, also know that a lot of day camps every single day will have a bus that's coming to and from camp. So you might be the counselor who's assigned to be on that bus in the afternoon or in the morning for that coming in and off of campgrounds. So just know that we talked about it a little bit with that longer transportation to resident camp, but it's the same deal for those bus counselors for day camp, right? You might be assigned to it. So you might be getting on early and getting those campers awake and ready for camp, or you might be in the afternoon of getting those campers back home to where they need to be. And there's also some other responsibilities here of making sure everyone's getting signed in and signed out and going to the right parent, and responsibilities that you need to pay attention to. So transportation duty, not something you would think about when you're working at a camp, but it's definitely one of those things that I know I am always thinking about as a camp director, because it's one of those bigger things, because it's an exchange, right? You're taking that in loco parentis responsibility and you're exchanging it between yourself and the actual parent of the camper. So it's really important. So that's my transportation story slash jobs, need to know information. Matt, you want to hit up your next little job or big
Certainly.
job?
The only thing that I would say about busing, I never went to a camp where busing was a thing. But a great phrase I heard, I think on another they did a transportation one on the day camp pod. And one of my takeaways was summer camp starts the moment that those kids step on the bus. And that's your job as a camp counselor to bring all the amazing, wild, magical, zany parts of camp onto the bus. So yes, thank you for that one, Oliver. My third, I never thought I would be a blank when I worked at summer camp, was I never thought I'd be an assistant chef while I worked at summer camp. And sometimes at camp, you are going to have the opportunity to work in the kitchen. And that might be something as simple as doing dish. When I was a camp counselor, we had dish teams and we rotated into dish, either because after meals was like unstructured-ish time where our co-counselor was looking after the kids. Anyway, so we were doing dish. Or I had a week where I was a kitchen assistant and I was just literally in the kitchen. And those times are so different from camp because just in terms of like, it's very like working in the kitchen, it's a camp job. So there is some emotion to it. And, but when you're with kids, it's all like, how you doing? How are you feeling? Let's take our time to do this thing. Let's explore this conversation. When you're in the kitchen, it's like, no, the meal is coming in 2 hours, so chop that thing faster. Let's go. And not that the kitchen manager is like, not that all kitchen managers are like drivers like that, but they're responsible for feeding sometimes like 200 or 300 kids on time. So urgency is very different in that way. And I loved working in the kitchen. I often said that if I could go back and do a job at camp, it like working as an assistant, not in charge, never in charge of the kitchen, but as an assistant, I would love to do that because, it's prep. You can work like on your personal efficiency and like getting better at chopping peppers. You learn some life skills in that way too. And you are literally serving camp when you cut those peppers and you make them into nice squares, or you are making dessert and you put in that little extra effort to like put their cabin letter on their cupcakes or something like that. Those, again, it's just those little extra special touches, and you can do that from anywhere in the kitchen. And you will also make amazing friends with your fellow kitchen staff. I could go up to one of my friends, her camp name is Mattel, and say, bread wall, and she would go, bread wall, because we literally made a wall of bread to divide the kitchen counters while it was sub day. But that was just a fun time. So embrace the times you get to work in the kitchen. That is one of those things where sometimes people say, oh, I have to work in the kitchen. No. You get to work in the kitchen.
I love that, because I really love cooking, but I also respect the cooks who are cooking. You got to take the number of people on camp, times that by 3, and they're cooking that many meals a day minimum, not including dietary restrictions. If you want to be a good counselor or a great counselor, make sure your campers learn during that time of camp how much to respect the kitchen staff, right? Do some type of act of kindness towards them. It will go a long way for those people who are in that hot summer kitchen cooking that many meals for that many people every single day. They're amazing people. And hats off to Matt for doing some time in the kitchen too. My next job that I wanted to talk about is scavenger hunt setups, or just setups for programs in general. I have a really good story about a good friend of mine. She had planned this very large scavenger hunt for her female village that stretched all over camp. This was on a 500-acre camp. And if you want a good idea of how long an evening program lasts, it's only supposed to be about an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. But unfortunately, if you are doing a 45-minute hike to the top of a mountain to get a clue, that is very difficult to solve, and then come back down that mountain to then continue doing about 30 other clues, time goes very quickly. So this one has to do a little bit about time. For me, it was a little bit about honesty, because what ended up happening was she created the scavenger hunt. She put so much work into it, and I just felt for her, because she had a camper issue. She couldn't set up the program. She looked at to me really desperately during dinner and said, "Can you please set up my evening program for me? All you need to do is put these things in these spots." And she gave me the list and the box of things that she had already. She was super prepared for it. And then in that like brief time just after dinner before evening program starts, I'm running as fast as I can around camp, just sweating buckets, trying to get a clue here, a clue there. And it just like they are starting the scavenger hunt and I haven't even finished putting out all of the clues yet. So that's where we were at.
There's one step ahead of the kids. That's all you got to
Yeah.
be. They just
That's
can't
all
see
you gotta
you.
be.
They can't see you hiding them. That's it. If you can achieve that, then
Right.
you're fine.
So yeah, I get everything hidden. They are doing the scavenger hunt as I'm, placing the last clues. Some of them are getting close to catching up to me. But the issue was it took so much time to A, set it up, but also B, for the campers to do the activity. It wasn't thought how much time it takes to get from A to B, to figure out this clue. And those things are hard to determine anyways, right? I've planned scavenger hunts or activities that I thought were going to last like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and they end up being, very brief. Another really good story is we had a paint fight and we spent 2.5 hours getting water balloons filled up, filling up buckets, filling these weird sock things with dyed paint so that our campers could throw paint at each other. And all this work uh, ended up being just 8 minutes of fun. That's it. And
Right.
when you tie water balloons or balloons for a long period of time, your fingers start to like wear.
Oh yeah.
Because this was the summers before they had those really nice little ones you could just
Oh
tie
yeah.
onto a
Yeah. Yeah.
faucet, which we should put in the show notes. Those are amazing and everyone should know about them. Um, but yeah, it's just time. You got to think about your planning and how much time things are going to take. And I should have had the honesty to tell her, like, hey, I'm going to take 4 clues out of your evening program tonight just because I don't think they're going to be able to complete it. And lo and behold, we were stealing clues out of it while they were playing so that they could get back in time, because at a certain point we knew, oh no, it's 8:30 at night and they still have 10 clues to go, and that's the lead group of girls. Some of them are getting so tired and like just bored of like, they've
Right.
been running
Right.
around camp so much. So yeah, it's just that kind of thought process.
And you
And
just like come out of the woods with like a hoodie on. You're like, I'm the magical clue fairy, and I'm gonna give you the next 6 answers. Go, children. I
oh
like
man,
it.
I wish the clue fairy would show up that night, but
I know, man.
they weren't there.
They're,
We hadn't,
they're a mysterious person. They only show up randomly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a thing. Be honest with yourself. How much time you're going to think something. If you can run through something at camp, that's the most valuable thing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so hard to find that time, but yeah,
And you
that's
could
my
go back to our first episode, right? Number 1 was planning perfect programs.
yeah.
And that'll give you all the tips you'll need in that one.
But remember, when you listen to that one, it was the first episode, so please don't judge us so harshly.
Oh, we were very stiff back then, for sure.
Yes. Matt, do you have another good job that people should know about when they become a counselor?
Yes. So number 4 for me, I never thought I would blank when I decided to be a camp counselor. Was I never thought I would get the opportunity to work with campers with specific needs, and those needs might involve behavioral needs, maybe they're physical needs or mental needs, or like I said, some extreme behaviors. But I don't think I would have had that opportunity to work directly with some of those campers. So at some camps, you'll have the ability to be, we call them one-to-one counselors, where you were a counselor in a cabin and that specific camper was also in the cabin, but you were their one-to-one staff member. So there were already 2 counselors, but you were another person because you were just focused on that camper's needs. Or sometimes staff or camps have adult volunteers who are adults with those specific needs that come back to camp, and they operate as volunteers or in some other aspect of the program. And that was such a great opportunity that I never thought I would do. And it teaches you so many things. It teaches you thinking on your feet. You learn to care for somebody in such a specific way that you probably have never done for your entire life. You learn a lot of patience. You learn creativity, and your heart like literally expands in a way that you never thought. You never thought that you could care for someone or build a relationship in that way with someone. So I highly encourage you, even if it is not your skill set, even if you feel like it isn't for you. When I was a camp director, I always appreciated counselors who were like, I'm not really sure if I can do this, but if you can help me with it, I'm happy to try it. Because, and then 9 times out of 10, those are amazing experiences. So I encourage you to embrace those moments when you're working with a camper who you might see on their form coming in that they have some specific behavior stuff. They're like, whoa, I'm not so sure about that. But your camp should be able to offer you the support that you need. Um, and you should trust your judgment, trust your skills in that way that you'll be able to help that person or ask for help when you need it. Because it's an experience like nothing I've done in my entire life. And I don't, I never planned on being an occupational therapist, as I think we call it in Canada, maybe the States. But I know that I've had that experience and took a lot away from it. So I hope you have the chance to embrace that and enjoy that as part of your camp career.
Yeah. I think, Matt, you also kind of hit on something that's a really difficult thing that happens at camp sometimes as well. And that sometimes you talked about you'll get a form as a counselor before the session starts that might let you know of some of the needs of your campers before they arrive. And that's really important to look at as a counselor because it prepares you for what you might be looking into. But something that does happen with camps, and this is a difficult thing to know about, but it's true. Some parents or some families might not have had their child diagnosed, so it might not be on the form if the child does struggle with something. The parent might have chosen to not put it on the form because they want their child to have an experience that summer that's different. And you might have a camper who comes into your cabin who you might be looking at and working with, who you might kind of start questioning, like, do they have some type of disability? Is there something going on here that is not on the form? For you to know this right now, it's really important. One, it's not your job to diagnose them. It's not your job to say, hey,
Yes.
this kid has this, that, or the other thing. It's your job to make sure that the kid does have a great time at summer. You can report things like that to your leadership staff. You might say, hi, I have a camper who is really struggling in these categories. I just needed to let you know that ahead of time. And they can maybe contact the parents. I know that I have been a director on the phone with a parent who has actively told me that they purposefully did not say some of the needs their child has because they wanted to make sure. I've also been on the line with a parent who decided that they didn't want to have their kid taking medication while they are at camp for some of their needs. So there's a laundry list of things that could potentially happen. But as a counselor, it's not your job to diagnose them. It's your job to make sure they have a great time while they're there. And yeah, it may cause some complications in your cabin. It may cause some confusions, but you really got to do what you can with what you have as a counselor. And I know that's a hard thing to say, but talk to your leadership staff members, work with your work with that child if you need to, and you get an opportunity to talk to that parent about what their needs might be of that
Hmm.
camper.
Yep.
It's a tough situation to be in, but make sure you are the caring individual when it comes out at the end of the day.
If Oliver, I could just throw one more thing in there, is that it's an incredible opportunity for other campers too to get to be in community with with campers that are very different from them in whatever way. Because we tend to homogenize as kids, or like our parents will put us into schools, and then we have our friend group and all those things. But to get to go to camp and have that shaken up by meeting someone completely different, what an incredible gift that is to the rest of those campers. So your job as a counselor is to still, like I said right off the top, is to build community, to care for those people, and to give them all, because like every child, every person deserves that camp experience. And it's your job to make it the best you can. So Oliver, I'm so, you were in my brain when you said it's not our job to diagnose, it's our job to help make a difference. So thank you.
Yeah, and I've seen cabins that where this might be something that is shown, yet still that cabin has an amazing experience at camp. And that's not even, I'm not saying that like it happens 10% of the time. I'm saying like that happens almost 90% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Because you got to realize your campers aren't diagnosing either. that just might be a quirk that kid has, or something that's going on. Kids are a lot more forgiving typically than adults.
Absolutely.
So that child who has been put inside of a box of what they might supposed to be like might have that opportunity to now be somebody that they are meant to be, with people who are now going to accept them, which is something that happens at camp. We talk about it all the time. It's a huge value of accepting other people and being inclusive. So this is really sometimes just that opportunity for them to finally do it. My job, though, to move us on, is one that comes up, and you may see it happen because you got to do it during a holdover break or a turnover break or whatever you might call it, but it's between two sessions of camp. You might have it happen because it's been 2 weeks and it's laundry day. It's that time at camp where, hundreds of people maybe are trying to get their clothes washed in what could be a tiny laundry room. It might be taking fellow counselors' laundry out for the day and helping them get their laundry done on your time off. There's a lot of different times that laundry has to be done at camp. It's just, a lot of people wearing clothes and you don't always think about it. But my favorite times that laundry day come into play are on the rainy days. You may be running camp and you've had a couple rainy days in a row, and now clothes are starting to run really thin. If you are a camp director, please try to find a way to get people's clothes washed and dried so that nobody's being miserable in all of the wet. Doing laundry after 2 days of rain is almost better than the sun actually coming out. It just changes everything as far as the morale of your camp. So if you are a camp director, please think about that. It's a worthy investment. Even if you're calling in like a laundry assistance team to come in for like $500, that $500 will change the mood of every single person on camp so much. It will be unbelievable. So think about it. But the other thing is, sometimes you might not be able, if it's a rainy day, try to find those ways and techniques at camp that are sometimes get a little creative on how you can dry more clothes faster. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to laundry duty. I know that I was once a camp counselor when it rained for 5 days straight, and we just didn't have a way to get any laundry done, and we ended up just getting some old climbing rope, and literally just laced it from all of the bunks. And it was like a giant maze inside of our cabin of clothes that were drying, and we turned it into a game. It was actually a lot of fun. But just find the ways to try and get those clothes dry on those rainy days, but also getting the laundry done if you might be somebody who ends up on laundry duty and has to wash those clothes. Also, really good books help with laundry day.
Nice. Love it. I like that 2 of yours, Oliver, have involved finding a good book. So you should find a good book because you might be on transportation duty or laundry duty.
Yeah, I'm a big reader. So if you can't find a book, just shoot me a message and I'll give you a book real quick.
Yes. Yep. Good one. Okay. Number 5 for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Awesome. My last one I put of the jobs you definitely never expect to do while you work at camp is sanitation inspector. And a sanitation inspector just means that there might be some like gross stuff that you have to deal with at camp. Cleaning a cabin being the least gross to that. And we did a whole episode on cabin cleaning techniques. That was a fun episode. I love that we talked for a whole episode on that. So make sure you tune into that one. But so that's like the least. Cleaning a cabin, kind of gross, old socks, underwear, places you got to help campers move those. But sometimes a camper might vomit. Sometimes there might be some other bodily functions that happen, especially with younger kids. That is just going to happen. And I will tell you that doesn't change as you become a camp director. And I'll share this one quick story as you move up in the summer camp world. So I'm cheating a little bit because this wasn't when I was a counselor, but Oliver, hopefully you can forgive me. When I worked at a camp, this is not a camp that is open anymore. And it wasn't because of this. It's a weird way of prefacing this, but because there was an issue with the septic system. And I don't know if you know how a septic system works, but essentially there's these big tanks. And if they don't go out into the proper drainage, they fill up. And if they fill up and can't be used anymore because the government says you can't use them properly anymore, but you can still use them as big tanks, somebody needs to measure that tank. And how do you measure that tank, you might ask? Somebody needs to get a giant stick and write the measurements on it. And then somebody needs to walk around to said tanks and dip the stick in with gloves and like full PPE, very COVID safe, and measure where the liquid level was. And that's a job that I may or may not have had at a camp. And I never thought I would do that. And I'm not going to pretend that that was like, I got to do that. No, I had to do that. But I did it because that was the way that camp was going to be allowed to operate. I knew, and it was my job as the director to do the dirtiest job. And as a counselor, you should not and will not have to do that. But know that everyone, I think the takeaway is that everyone is in charge of doing what needs to be done. Everyone is in charge of these random jobs. Everyone from picking up trash to plunging a toilet, we all do what needs to be done because we know that what we're doing helps the overall camper experience. And I hope that you never have to dip a giant stick into a septic tank.
My imagination of Matt and his poop stick will make me happy for years.
That's what they called it. They said, "Oh, Matt's got the poop stick," and all the campers ran because they knew I was opening the septic tanks, and I was like, "Yes, run, children."
And also, like, for every single time, if you're a counselor ever doing a gross job, there is proof and evidence that you will still get to do gross jobs when you become a camp director. It never goes away. It will always be there
For the rest of your life. Yeah.
Uh, my last one, and I'm going to make this as quick as possible, but it's just longer than expected conversations. So this will happen with your campers, and it's actually one of my favorite things about camp is just you get into a conversation with a camper about something that's really important to them that they might be learning about. It might be a huge life question that they have. These are those cabin chats, like on the porch at night. You maybe just can't go to bed because your campers just have this question in their head that they can't answer. And it's not always just about you having to give them an answer. It's just letting them talk it out, say what they need to say, ponder what they need to ponder. You can ask those questions to them that really get them thinking. And it's just a conversation that is so developmental for youth. And I think it's so important, but it's not something that is in the job description. But it's one of those fantastic parts of camp that I always loved. I think they're super important. And they are, quite honestly, maybe one of like the top 5 things at camp that just happen and make camp a better place, make memories last a really long time, are so formative to your campers' development. It's just those longer than expected conversations. And it's not always just with campers. Sometimes you have these with your fellow counselors, right? Like you're learning and developing too. So you might, have a late night talking to a fellow counselor that is so developmental for you. And I can remember some of these very specific conversations where literally my life changed because of them. And I just wanted to make sure I ended on that note of how powerful some of these things that you do at camp can actually be. And those conversations for me have been life changing. I know that they're so important to the dynamics of camp. And I hope that when you become a counselor, or if you are a counselor, that you get many, many of these. So that is my last one.
Good one. Oliver, before we move on to our E.G.E.L, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to something that Go Camp Pro is doing right now. And if for those of you who don't know, First Class Counselors is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. And this really cool thing that we are doing this year to help people prepare for the summer of 2021 is called 5-Minute Fridays. And if you love the little like quick tips or insider knowledge that you get when you listen to First Class Counselors, then you're going to love 5-Minute Fridays. Every single week leading up to the summer of 2021, you're going to get 4 5-ish minute videos from myself. And I am the least impressive person on this list, by the way. It's going to be myself, Ruby Compton, Beth Allison, and Travis Allison. You're going to get 4 videos from each of us, or 4 videos from us, giving you some of the insider tips on higher level things. So if you're a counselor listening to this, some of it will be super applicable to you in like 5 or 6 years in your camping journey. But there's program stuff in there too. There's stuff that you are going to be able to apply. So whether you're a director or a counselor listening to this episode, there will be something in 5-Minute Fridays for you. And to find out more about 5-Minute Fridays, go to gocamp.pro/5mf. That's GOCAMP.pro/5MF.
All right, and now let's go into our E.G.E.L. So our ever growing, ever learning. It's a trick or a tip, a game or a song for counselors to use to be better every day. Matt, do you want to kick us off with what your E.G.E.L is?
Yes, thank you. The mine is a nature game called Find a Tree. I hope that I haven't mentioned this one before, but if I have, it's worth repeating because it's my go-to game with kids outside, and you can make it COVID safe. Um, anyway, the way that it works is you and a partner are out in the woods together. Your partner blindfolds themselves and you lead them to a tree, any tree. You want to play in a pretty like dense woodlot, like lots of trees. But you both hands on their shoulders, you kind of lead them and you tell them, "Oh, there's a stick here. Step up, make a big step." But you want to lead them in like kind of a windy, a circuitous way, if you will, to find a tree. And then when they get to that tree, you say, "Okay, you have 1 minute to get to know that tree." That's all you say. And then they might like see how tall it is, how round it is. Are there any weird like sticky outy parts or what's around the ground? We don't tell them that. We just say get to know the tree. And then after that minute, the partner leads them back to the starting spot again in a very twisty, windy, confusing way. So that person loses their bearings because they're blindfolded, remember? And then when you get back, you say, "Okay, find your tree." They take the blindfolds off and they have three guesses as to which tree was theirs. And I've seen some amazing. I played this game for like 3 hours once. They wanted to just keep playing and they wanted the counselors to try it. And some people licked the trees to try to figure out which tree it was. It was amazing. So I encourage you this summer to play Find a Tree.
I really like that. I don't think you've said that one, so that is one I can now steal that I've never gotten to play before.
Please do. Yeah.
All right. For my E.G.E.L, I'm going to be giving you the simple and easy simple bets. These are small things that you can bet. I think it's really important to always preface that don't let it escalate. Don't let it get out of control. Sometimes these things can happen, but it's a lot of fun to do these. So, like a lot of things at camp, a little bit of bad can sometimes be a little bit of fun. Um, but be a good judge. Maybe have yourself be a judge so that if your campers are making bets with each other, you can be there to say, I accept this bet, or this bet has been denied, and you can have a little bit of fun with it as being a judge. But it can be a lot of fun. I like to do this with my campers, and some of the things that we would bet would be a push-up at any time. So if they lost the bet, they would have to do a push-up whenever I'd say do a push-up now. So I usually like to steal that one for like if they were misbehaving at a later time and I knew I had a push up on them, I could stop them from the misbehavior to be like, no, push up. And they'd be like, wait, what? And be like, yeah, you owe me a push up from the bet before. Give me the push up. And they'll be like, ah, and they get down and do a push up. I like to bet a bouquet of grass, which is always a really fun one. And it distracts them for about 2 minutes as they go and grab a bunch of grass. And if they just like hand sweep it, that's not a bouquet. It's got to be like organized and pretty.
Yeah, I want a
Uh,
curated bouquet of grass for sure.
exactly, right? I'm not simple. Please treat me. Uh, I like door manager for the day. It means that no member of the cabin is ever has to open a door for the rest of the day. So
Ooh,
if a camper needs to do something, the person who lost the bet has to open the door for them. 10 tree hugs. That's a really easy one. Just hug 10 trees. A list of names for my future children. We at one camp I worked at, listies was a big thing, and it was getting an award at the end of the day for a cabin with the longest list. But from there, I took it and made a little bit of my own, and it was just lists. I'd be like, I bet you a list of different ways to use cauliflower in a recipe that you can't touch that line before me, and
mm,
it's simple. A portrait of me because I like to see myself look pretty,
nice.
and I also like to inflate my ego, so maybe 5 compliments before bed. And those are all the rewards you can get from betting, but the things that you can bet on are, like I said, it could be let's sprint to the end of the basketball court for 5 compliments. All right, whoever wins this game of Gaga wins a portrait of themselves, right? Like,
Cool. Yeah, 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 yeah.
so the little bets are great to just kind of escalate the day a little bit more. It's good for if you maybe have a little bit of a competitive cabin. It adds a little fire to them that they need to have fun in some kind of situations. And I've been doing these with the kids that I work with now, and they've been really enjoying them. I currently owe a couple of push-ups, so I'm not going to say my betting has gone well, but it's been happening.
Love it. That's awesome.
All right. And I guess that's our show for the day. It's been great talking about some awesome camp stuff with you. Matt, if you want people to get a hold of you so you can share with them even more awesome camp stuff, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at matt, at gocamp.pro, or find me on Instagram at iskis.
There you go. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can get me at oliver.gregan.scd@gmail.com. And we also kind of have an Instagram now for First Class Counselors, and you can direct message us on that. And it's just the name, First Class Counselors. But if you did enjoy today's show, we would be so grateful if you left us a review wherever you are listening to the podcast. Your ratings and reviews not only tell us what you like and don't like about the show, but it also boosts our rankings and helps more people discover the show. So that's good for us and you.
And don't forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/FCC. You can find the show notes that we talked about here, those many water balloon thingies and the past episodes we've referenced. And we'd be grateful for you to check out the other Go Camp Pro podcasts by going to gocamp.pro/podcasts and find more there. We are proud members of the Go Camp Pro podcast network.
And with that, thanks for listening, friends. And remember, camp is camp and camp's all good.